Well, when things started developing as they were developing back in the 70s, this was the time where there was a lot of social turmoil going on. And one of the things that became obvious that what we didn't have was women officers. You know, we had matrons, we had women that work in other departments, other sections of the department rather, but we had no female officers on the street. As we got names rolling in, and the whole notion saying, well, okay, we have women that are interested in law enforcement, how are we going to help them get onto the job? So I think Danielson was the city personnel director at the time, so he allowed me to develop some mock exams. So with these mock exams, I was able to bring in a group of maybe 20 people at a time and have them take these mock exams. Well, the idea is that if they've taken these mock exams, it furthered their interest in law enforcement, because sometimes people had no idea what law enforcement was about. And in doing so, you start finding that you had a small nucleus of exceptional people. Well, Flossie and Felicia happen to be two of those exceptional people. Trying to convince women to go into a male-dominated field took some doing.
Well, with me, I had kind of always wanted to get into law enforcement, and it was because of a couple of incidents that happened in my life prior to, but the major one was, one of them was having worked as a legal secretary or in a law office. We had a case that when we did the briefing, we realized that there was a lot of mistakes made on law enforcement side. And I thought, the officer didn't, maybe I could do that. So I started trying to apply. And when I first started out, there was a height requirement. And that's when I found out that I was only 5'5½", though I claimed 5'6" most of my life. And then at some point, my sister, who knew that I wanted to be a law enforcement officer, was with the city. And she knew Leon Taylor. And she knew that I wanted to be an officer, so evidently she gave my name to Leon, and lo and behold, he connected, recruited, and that's what started my law enforcement career.
And I was just the opposite. I had no interest in being a police officer at all. And as a matter of fact, I didn't have a really positive feeling about police officers. But I was looking to get my degree, and I was already in criminal justice at Sac State, and I was looking for a part-time job. So I was in the Oak Park Community Center. I was in Oak Park, and Leon was in the Sacramento Urban League. He was doing recruitment. So I filled out the application. I checked the community service officer box, and Leon said, no, check both boxes. One was for community service officer, the other one was for police officer, because he said they do not hire women anyway as police officers, and you're going to have to go through the same training. So that's how I got here. My interest was strictly in just finishing school. I wanted to be a probation officer. And I fell in love with the police work, with law enforcement.
Well, I think really it was their personal attitudes. When we're out on the track and they're running and they're trying to go over hurdles, they're trying to pull up walls, they're trying to do chin-ups, and the mere fact that they were willing to push themselves told me something, because the notion of endurance is not just physical, but it was emotional. And I think after that first month of us working together, you start understanding what motivates that person. So there was something, and I can't tell you exactly what it was because it was over 40-some years ago, you know, that told me that, well, I guess they told me, and the way they responded, that they would be good candidates.
He put us through he put us through a pre-training program that prepared us for not just getting hired, but getting into and through the academy. He had us out there every week at Hiram Johnson High School, running hurdles, running laps, climbing walls, dragging dummies. He put us through a complete program, and it wasn't just us. He did a really nice recruitment program. There were about eight of us. Yeah, that we were Leon's kids. Absolutely. He put us through the physical. He had mock interviews, so we knew how to handle ourselves before a interview panel. He prepared us.
In fact, when we were doing the physical agility, it was like, there was a couple of times when and I used to run hurdles when I was in high school, but I think I cleared this hurdle or something and hit my knee. And I was like, oh, I can't do this. I'm going to the doctor because I can't do this, even though I had been running hurdles and track in high school. And the doctor said, oh no, you'll have to stop, you have to quit. I went back and told Leon what the doctor said, and he says, the doctor who? I was like, you will not quit.
Dr. Leon says.
You take your time off to heal it, to ice it, to do whatever else, and I will see you. And sure enough, I was back there, and the doctor was wrong, and Leon was right.
One of the things that I guess that happens when you go out and you actually do something in terms of recruiting people, and you put them in an environment that is so diametrically different than anything that they had been into before, and you could not assure them of the outcome. Yes, you worry, but yes, there was a lot of concern on my part. There were some incidents that they related earlier that I would hear about, and I quite honestly didn't know how they were going to put up with it.
Trust was still a challenge. Getting the guys to trust us, getting the community was behind us. The community was behind us. That was not a problem. But the officers were a real problem. The biggest challenge was within the department, getting them to trust us and to accept that we were there. There was always, it seemed like there was always a constant battle. If it's a male-dominant profession, like law enforcement, it's always going to be a thought that you've got to be stronger, you've got to be bigger, you've got to be tougher. When, especially in law enforcement, that's not always the case. That's not the requirement. You might need to be smarter, and that's one of the reasons I think women have been so successful in the field. Yeah, the locker room. They did not have a separate locker room for men and women because there were just 2 women and, what, 300 men, 400 men. So what they did was they changed the locker configuration so that the men went in on one side and the women went in on the other side.
And our wall was
just the lockers between them and us, and it truly was them and us, because things would come flying over the locker to, you know, shock you or intimidate you, and they were just like boys. Oh my God.
It's a man's world. It's a man's world.
It's a man's world.
You don't belong here. You know, you don't wear shorts,
straps,
you don't wear
T-shirts.
So, come up, you don't wear
whatever,
that. So that's what you get. And then sometime we'd come in, though it was very small. The area that we had,
because it was just 2 of us, though.
Yeah, just 2. And so what happened? We'd come in sometimes, and the lockers would be shifted, so that there's either a crack between or just something would be changed, and we'd have to either shift ourselves. And then at one point we were on different shifts. Our shifts were slightly, so we didn't have the support of each other.
When you went to detective division, it was like a dagger in my heart, because you know what, we were getting through. We were building camaraderie with our coworkers. We were being accepted. We were really actually doing well. And for the powers that be within the department, I don't think they expected that, and they did not want that. So the next resort to get rid of us was to drive a wedge between us, and they sent Flossie to detectives and sent me to graveyard, and then that separated us. Divide and conquer, I think, was really the the plan, because we used to help each other get dressed. I was thinking,
yeah.
oh my God, how am I going to put my belt on without Flossie? How's this going to work? You know, so, and so that's what they did. They sent her to Detective Division. They sent me to Graveyard, and going to Graveyard, we're starting all over. Going to Detective, we're starting all over. And they thought, okay, we're going to get rid of them this way.
I was on vacation, I believe it was, when I was sent to Detective Division, and no one told me I was being transferred. But in patrol, when Felicia at roll call, it was announced that,
I think they said
Felicia Crump?
Flossie Murphy.
They mixed our first, that who was going to Detective Division. And so when I get back, Felicia called me to tell me that I'm no longer in patrol. And so I'm like, what are you talking about? No one told me. So I ended up calling the Detective Division, and I was very angrily told, just show up here on Monday morning. And
you didn't have to get your input to transfer you? It's just...
No,
but later on I was told why. Yeah, right. Felicia was being congratulated. I wasn't even there. And then, so I was told to show up. And then what happened for the next 3 months after that, sad to say, was I got phone calls from patrol officers, from uniform officers at night, 24 hours a day, obscene, nasty, filthy phone calls asking me who did I blank to get to where I went, that they were going to kill 2 N's, the N word, with 1 stone. It was horrible. But for about 2 months I went through that, and I was calling, leaning on Felicia, leaning on my husband, my family. Then I finally decided to have my number changed. So I had my telephone number changed, and I went to the department, gave it to one of the detective sergeants, and I gave it to radio, and then I gave it to, there was a 3rd person, I can't remember right now who I gave it to. But then later on, I was called into the office and chastised because I didn't put it on the form that would give it back to all the officers who were calling me and doing. Well, I was, and for like 2.5 months, the obscene phone calls, and I had never heard the N word so much before in all my life. But you know, the other thing, I haven't gotten from that point to this point, or even as we progressed in our careers. Now, we've talked about some negative things, but there are a lot of positive.
Oh my
As
God.
I indicated before, if you were to put them on a scale, the positive outweigh the negative. And because we had officers like Leon Taylor and George Brown and Dana Falkenauer and Jean Burchett, and we could go on and name some of the officers.
Skip Bernasconi, that's downstairs.
Skip Bernasconi, who's here. I mean, some of the officers that they took the challenge with us, in that they signed on. They knew we could do it, and they were supportive, and they understood what we were going through.
It's really humbling. I mean, I never thought anything, I wasn't even aware that anyone thought of us as trailblazers, you know. Every now and then, my boyfriend and I, we would talk about the transition in law enforcement that the black officers are going through, the women, and we'd laugh among ourselves and say, you know, we're the old guys now, we made all this happen. But I never thought anyone really would acknowledge that, or it's humbling that people see the contribution that we made and the difference that we made. We had a department of brothers. And also, like Flossie said, not just the black officers. The black officers really embraced us, but we had some officers that came to our defense that you would least expect.
Yeah.
I was on Graveyard, and it was my last night on Graveyard, and I was like, they were trying everything they could to get rid of me, and I had a series of really unfortunate interactions with different officers and supervisors. And that night, I had been called to the lieutenant's office. The lieutenant was explaining why, because I didn't have my hat on so many times, and I didn't do this and I didn't do that. They were deciding on giving me a reprimand, and they sent me, and he was letting me know that. And he said, you know, you can wait in the squad room. So my 2 partners in that section, one was big, huge white officer, Rich Bailey, and the other one was Don Scott. Both of them very, you know, conservative, rigid guys, no nonsense. And when I first started on Graveyard, they didn't have anything at all to do with me. But as we progressed, we became good partners. Well, they went into that lieutenant's office, and the lieutenants, the captain, 3 lieutenants, the captain, and those 2 guys were in there, and they were discussing me. And those 2 guys, I could hear them saying a lot of bad words. Those 2 guys pretty much told them, you know what, you've been giving her a hard time this whole year. She has done nothing except prove that she can do this job. If you write one bit of negative paper on this woman, on this officer, we know where all the bodies are buried. We recommend that you not do that. And they didn't. And I was looking when they tore up the paper, and they came out of the room and said, hey, let's get back on the street. And I'm like, okay.
So in 1989, I was new to Sacramento, and I was working at the county welfare office. And I was working at the welfare office with a team of deputies. There were 3 of them. And one in particular, her name was Sharon Cadigan. She actually knew Flossie Crump. Flossie called Sharon and asked Sharon if she knew of anybody that could take the police test and pass it and become a good candidate for a police officer. And Sharon mentioned me. And that was the first time I had the opportunity to meet Flossie Crump. From the time that we met, Flossie just took it to a completely different level by giving classes on how to pass entry-level examinations, and after that would be working out and getting ready for the physical agility test. And once I entered the police academy, we didn't get an opportunity to talk much, but every opportunity she had, she made sure she was in touch with me. And she made me understand, you know, the type of mindset that I had to have in that academy, because it was a pretty rough thing. And back in those days, we actually lived in our academy. So it's just a constant influence that she had, and that she continued to mentor me throughout the years. It actually gives me a great opportunity, because once I graduated from the academy, I was able to start working patrol and doing these positive things, and Flossie was always there. Years later, well, I actually worked a lot of patrol. I actually worked I was one of the first POP officers back in the day, 1996 or so, and had an opportunity to work briefly with narcotics and a couple of other different areas within our department, which leads me to where I am right now. And currently, I am the the magnet officer at Hiram Johnson High School. And the awesome part about having this job is it gives me the opportunity to do the very same thing that Flossie did for me, and constantly influence others to head down this positive road of law enforcement. So just that contact years ago with her has led to me doing this positive thing right now. The biggest thing with me and Flossie is the fact that I'm here and have been here for 26 years because she came and sought me out. She found me. And if each officer can do that and find at least one other person that could spend 25 years on a department, this is what's going to make things a lot better as we deal with our communities.
So it's like when I look back on it, like Felicia said, sometimes I'm a little sad when I think of that we had to go through it. It makes me a little sad. Then I tell myself, but I'm glad that I went through it. Well, no, not glad, but I would not have changed going through it. And then I look at who I am today, and then I look at the honor that's been bestowed upon us. And I say to myself that I would not have chosen to go through some of those things, okay? But I wouldn't have changed it. I don't regret it because I'm very proud of the person I am today. And the bottom line is, I'm really in love with me. I mean, I like the person I am. I can see people in different lights, and I can accept people for who they are. And I'm, like I said, I'm really proud of, I mean, I really love me. I like who I am.
Oh yeah, we're pretty awesome.